calls on. Dallas did not get the deal done pre-draft, and they did not come out of the draft with their answer at wide receivers. So post-draft, they circled back. They were willing to offer a little bit more, maybe go from a fourth-round pick up to a third-round pick, and that was good enough for the Steelers. And now the Cowboys come away with one of their offseason priorities finally filled, which was to get that strong number 2 wide receiver behind CeeDee Lamb.
Okay, so good for the Cowboys, but there's been a lot of conversation about why the Steelers would want to do this. What do you know about why the Steelers would part ways with Pickens in this moment?
Sure. I mean, he's been productive. He just turned 24. It seems a little odd, but think about it. Beginning of the offseason, they traded for DK Metcalf and gave him a big new contract extension that pays him in excess of $30 million a year. George Pickens has 1 year left on his contract at about $4 million a year, but like most people who have 1 year left on their deal, he'd like a new one. And the Steelers got to a point where they felt like they were not going to be willing to extend him at the compensation level that he was looking for. So the decision is to get what you can get now and move on with DK Metcalf and then a few other guys that they have on their roster supplementing him instead of having a sort of potentially disgruntled wide receiver behind Metcalf who wants a new contract and wasn't getting one.
Okay, so you mentioned the things that they do have on offense. The one big question mark is whether or not Aaron Rodgers is going to be playing for the Steelers. How might this impact the Aaron Rodgers situation in Pittsburgh?
I don't know that it does. I think people should be careful not to assume that it does. Aaron Rodgers, the last time we heard from him, it sounded very clearly as if he hadn't decided whether he wants to play at all this year. If he does, it looks like the Steelers are his one and only option. So they continue to await a decision from him. In the meantime, they've made it clear that they will operate their offseason as what's best for the team, not around the possibility of Aaron Rodgers coming there. They remain optimistic that he will ultimately sign with them, but they also remain aware that he might elect not to, that he might elect to retire and not play again. So the George Pickens move is about the long term for the franchise, a player that they had decided they weren't willing to give a big-time wide receiver extension to, so they get something in trade for him now as opposed to just losing him in free agency a year from now.
All right, that makes sense. We'll see what they end up doing and if Aaron Rodgers ends up in Pittsburgh.
Our developing story today, the Steelers trading away receiver George Pickens, sending him and a 6th-round pick to the Cowboys for a 3rd and a 5th. He had 900 receiving yards last season, but is going into the last year of his contract. Earlier on Get Up, Brooke Pryor talked about why Pittsburgh chose to move on.
Culture and that Christmas Day game, because there's no better example of kind of the headache that the Steelers would deal with, because while there is a respect for George Pickens, the talented player on the field, there was a lot that came with George Pickens off the field. At that Christmas Day game, George Pickens arrived to the stadium less than 90 minutes before kickoff. Inactives had already been announced, and I don't know if you remember, at this time, he was also dealing with a hamstring injury. He showed up late, came in the media entrance. This is not normal. There is a lot going on with George Pickens off the field. I think the Steelers looked at this and said, look, he is a good player on the field, but when we look at how this could play out down the line, he could be in line for a contract extension. If he doesn't get that contract extension, is there a holdout? Does it become a distraction? And how explosive does that locker room become if things don't go well this year, or if he becomes, number 2 to DK Metcalf's number 1? This is a situation where it could eventually be addition by subtraction. I cannot imagine that Aaron Rodgers was not aware that George Pickens could be traded. The Steelers have remained in constant contact with him since these conversations began about him potentially landing in Pittsburgh. Based on my conversations in the building, not only are the Steelers aware of what Rodgers has been dealing with in his personal life off the field, but I'm going to guess that that phone works 2 ways, and the Steelers have kept him informed of potential things that they could be going through. I don't think that this is a move that would catch Aaron Rodgers by surprise.
Football analyst Sam Acho here to weigh in. And Acho, on the Steelers side of things, if Pitt does get Aaron Rodgers, what kind of damage, if any, can he do without Pickens there?
I'm not sure how much damage that Aaron Rodgers can do with or without George Pickens. I think it goes back to what his superpower is with Aaron Rodgers specifically, is his ability to create a second play. I played against him twice a year every year when I was playing with the Bears. He has an ability to step up in the B gap and escape and create that second play. So if the first play isn't working, he creates a second one. But that elusiveness has gone down. He got sacked 40 times last year. The pass rushers are on him a lot more, at least the last several years. And so for me, The detraction or the loss of George Pickens, I would say, is going to be, yes, an issue, but the bigger issue is how athletic/elusive can Aaron Rodgers be if he does, in fact, sign with the Steelers to help them try and not just make the playoffs, but win in the playoffs.
And so you talk about the damage that Aaron Rodgers maybe could or could not do with whether or not George Pickens is out there on the field for the Steelers. What other avenues should Pitt seek in order for help?
I think Keenan Allen's a great avenue. Keenan Allen was with the Bears last year, one of the trio of wide receivers with him, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, and now he's a free agent. So Keenan Allen, who's a veteran, who year after year after year after year would go for over 1,000 yards, is a great addition to DK Metcalf. You know he's going to be consistent. For the most part, he's going to be healthy and reliable, and that's going to be a huge help for whoever plays quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so when you have a player of the caliber of Keenan Allen, who's a free agent at this time, I think it's a perfect fit and perfect addition for this Pittsburgh Steelers offense.
So let's look at the other side of this equation. What's the Cowboys ceiling now with the addition of George Pickens?
See, I don't think it's changed very much. I know there's a lot of talk and excitement about George Pickens, but the question is, what level of maturity, what level of play will you get from George Pickens? Talent is not the issue when it comes to George Pickens. He's extremely talented, but there are these issues of will he show up when it's game time, both figuratively and literally. We just heard Brooke Pryor talk about him showing up 90 minutes before kickoff. And yes, I understand an injury, but there are games where you're wondering, man, when will the George Pickens that you see shine actually show up? And so that's going to be the question. Can Dallas maximize George Pickens, get the most out of George Pickens? Whether it's a maturity thing, an emotional piece, that has to be different if Dallas wants to actually make a step past not just making the playoffs, but making noise in the playoffs.
Yeah. News in the NFL today, the Steelers trading receiver George Pickens to the Cowboys. Dallas gets a wideout to pair with CeeDee Lamb, and Pittsburgh gets some draft picks. How does this affect the courtship of Aaron Rodgers? Our first take, last take, weighs in.
Where they are now with Aaron Rodgers, it's like, how much do you think he helps this team? With what you have offensively, we're trying to revamp your run game, wanting to be run first, then to the play action pass, no George Pickens. What does Aaron Rodgers make you? Does Aaron Rodgers make you a championship contender? Does Aaron Rodgers make you a Super Bowl favorite? If you're a team that's about culture, if you're a team that's about family, that's about championships, you don't allow people to hold you hostage. And that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers are doing. I think it's far past time that they should have moved on from Aaron Rodgers.
They obviously think that Rodgers, at the end of the day, is going to go there. Rodgers is past his prime. Yeah. So-so year last year with the Jets at best. And where are they going to go if Rodgers is the quarterback? They're not winning a Super Bowl.
I'm not as down on Aaron Rodgers as most people are. I know that I am in the minority. I understand that. I'm thinking about what the Steelers had the last 2 years with Big Ben Roethlisberger and what they've had, since. And then I'm also asking myself, well, if y'all feel that way about it, what the hell did you let both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields go? We have to at least say to ourselves, no matter what we think of Aaron Rodgers, we know he's better than what you got. I don't think that you can go out there with Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson and Will Howard as your quarterback room. I just don't think so.
Looking at how the odds have shifted after the Pickens trade, the Steelers' odds to make the playoffs get slightly worse while it gets slightly better for the Cowboys. DK Metcalf's receiving yards prop increased 75 yards, and Pickens' prop is set for 800.
Mình cắt những phần len thừa đi. Rồi bây giờ sẽ móc tiếp một cái hàng nữa cũng bằng cái màu cam này. Mình móc tiếp lên nhé. Đây bây giờ sẽ móc tiếp lên. Mình sẽ móc những cái cánh hoa nhé mọi người. Móc những cánh hoa vào. Đây móc vào đây. Mọi người cứ móc lên 3 lần len là được một cánh hoa nhé. Đây, lần nữa này. Móc vào đây. Đấy, bây giờ sẽ móc những mũi tiếp theo. Móc mũi vào đây nhé. được một cái cánh như này, một cánh màu cam rất là xinh. Giờ mình sẽ móc vòng quanh những cái cánh nhé. Đây, móc tiếp vào này. Các luân phiên từng mũi một. Mũi tiếp. Mũi tiếp theo nữa này. Cứ lần lượt như thế này là được. Đây, móc nối vào đây và siết dây. Đấy, được 2 cánh rồi. Bây giờ móc tiếp những cánh còn lại nhé. Móc xuống này. Tiếp tục. Cứ móc lần lượt như thế này là được. Đấy, cứ từng mũi. Tiếp tục móc xuống nhé. Móc nối xuống đây. Đấy, được 3 cánh màu cam rồi. Mình gỡ thêm len để dùng nhé. Đây, móc tiếp vào. Cái móc luân phiên từng mũi. Đây, móc xuống này. Mũi nữa này. Đấy, mình móc xuống nữa. Móc nối xuống đây. Mình cứ móc lần lượt như thế này là được nhé.